Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome back after hopefully a very pleasant Labor Day weekend. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. We get together most weekday mornings to visit, talk strategies, share tips, success stories, support each of you. On my screen, which should be shared, we have the 509 Pacific website in the background, and then we have our notes here in the inset. Our website again is 509pacific.org. We have a text support line, 903-347-8042. And we post our trainings up on YouTube, and you can go back and visit prior trainings if you need. In terms of us, 509 is a 501c3 nonprofit. We applied for and received a grant. The grant has three mandates, one of which is to improve financial literacy, the second of which is to give away free shelf corps, and the third is to use that knowledge, use those shelf corps to help clients get funding to start or grow a business. Our agenda today is we're required, first of all, to make sure you're available of know of the availability of the resources that are on the website. So in 509pacific.org, the quick cash, you can read about it. There's a training video, the packet to participate. Primarily what we're focused on is business funding, whereby we give away the free shelf corps. The shelf corp provides that foundation for us to build the fundability factors on to be able to go get funding. So there's some training on it as well as the packet. And then we have a number of you that are distribution partners, those of you that are looking to get paid to help others. If you're interested in that, there's no cost to be a reseller, not even a contract that you have to sign. There are 5 trainings that they recommend that you watch. You fill out the form and we can follow up with you. So with that being said, hopefully you know where to go for any of those resources. Let's kind of dig into the more of the subject matter. We're going to talk about key concepts for business funding. And this is really important because so often we run into individuals, they want money, they need money to start a business, to grow a business, but often they're lacking the knowledge, the financial literacy to understand how the lenders are going to view them. And if you don't have a fundable business, you're not going to get business funding. You'll hear that a few times this morning. We're going to look at this in a different way today. And this is especially valuable for those of you that are our resellers, our distribution partners. I believe, truthfully and honestly, you and I have a formula, a process that we can help anyone put $500 in or $499.99, and from that be able so that's the input, and then the output should be $1 million or more of funding. And the way the process is designed, the formula is built, they shouldn't have any other financial outlay. So literally, if they are willing to invest 500 into getting a shelf corp. Now, the shelf corp is free. There's a processing fee. Our resellers may mark it up, I know. But other than just paying for the processing fee, the whole program was built to support itself. So clients do not have to go into their pocket to put more money in. So I'll describe how that works. And then one other element we've added to the agenda today is, especially if you're a reseller, I think it's helpful to include in your conversation with your prospects, what's the cost of doing nothing? If you didn't have 100,000 or 500,000 or $1 million to start or grow a business, what would be the opportunity cost? So we're going to talk about that a bit as well as Q&A and wrap it up. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we've covered number 1 already. We know what's on the 509 website. You know where to find it. So we're fine. We need to make sure we're all on the same page with these key concepts. So let's go ahead and dig in here. As I made reference to a couple minutes ago, so many people, they want money. Give me the money. Give me the money. But what they're overlooking is you have to qualify. There's no lender of any type of any location that just gives out money based upon how badly you want it or need it. So that's a rather immature or very adolescent approach to funding. Instead, we need to recognize I need to have a fundable business if I want funding. And that's really what we provide. That's the role. We're not the lenders. There's plenty of lenders out there, but the lenders want quote unquote fundable businesses. In other words, businesses that meet their underwriting criteria. So we all must drink of this Kool-Aid. We all must have this common belief because otherwise you could end up with clients that have unrealistic expectations. We don't want that. Now, furthermore, it's a bit more complicated because you might have someone say, well, great, what do I need to do to be fundable then? Well, it depends because there's different lenders and many lenders have different loan programs, and each of them often have their own underwriting criteria. So there's not one answer to that question. There, as we're going to talk more about, there's different things that different lenders look at, and of course we build off of that. Our program is built off of looking at what the client wants, what they need, what their mitigating circumstances are, and then matching them to the right lender and loan program, and then ensuring that they meet the underwriting criteria. Number three, when it comes to the underwriting criteria, there's other superficial elements, but the most basic way to understand how lenders underwrite what it takes to be quote unquote fundable that we made reference to is going to come to some combination of the three C's. And the truth is, if you don't have at least one of the three C's, there's probably no funding available. Now, in a perfect world, the more C's we have, the more credible we are, the more fundable we are, the more options we have, the more funding we can get. But the first of the three C's is credit. Now, I understand there's actually two types of credit. There's the business credit, the creditworthiness of the business under itself, under its EIN. And then, of course, secondly, we have the credit of the business owner under their social security number. Do all funding sources look at credit? Absolutely not. Do all of them that look at credit look at personal credit? Absolutely not. But credit is one of the three C's. The second of the three C's is collateral. Collateral are the assets that the borrower has that they're able to pledge that in case they are not able to repay the lender, that the lender can mitigate their risk. And the third and final C is capacity. And capacity we can call cash flow. So it's money. Do we have the ability to pay back the loan? So what we're really good at is legally and ethically helping clients build their three C's. So it's not that we're just out there looking for perfect clients. What we're instead is looking for clients that want to access funding, go through the process, and we can help them build their personal credit or business credit if they need. We can help them have adequate collateral. We can even help them have adequate capacity or cash flow. Don't need all three C's for all types of funding, but we need to have at least one of the three C's. And we're going to talk more today about leveraging collateral. Collaterals, if you're to just pick one of the three C's to optimize, it's, I think, the quickest and easiest, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But there are financing sources if you have just one of the three C's. If you have just credit, but you have no collateral, no capacity, there's funding available. If you have collateral, but no credit, no cash flow, yes, there's funding available. Or if you only have capacity, you only have those bank deposits, typically 10,000 or more a month, even if we don't have collateral, don't have credit, funding's available. Lenders like the SBA, they typically want to see all three C's, but there are lenders that look at just one of the three. Therefore, it's incredibly important to find the right type of funding based upon the client circumstances. Some of you you're all great, but some of you will kind of jump into it too soon and start creating some expectations of what clients should be receiving, or the type of funding that we should be pursuing. And often it's not based on all the data that we need. So I would not recommend that you, as a reseller, as a distribution partner, you can educate on different types and options. You can educate on the concept, but really, there's more that needs to go into figuring out the right type of funding than just what you think they may want or need. And that's our role. It's so important. People will say, well, how many clients did you fund last week or last month? We just finished up August. Zero. We're not a lender. The world doesn't need another lender. There's plenty of lenders. I think it was Friday of last week. We went through a list I put up on the screen, and you can go see it on our YouTube channel, of over 1,000 different lenders that we can work with. So the world doesn't need another lender. That's not the problem. The problem is most businesses are not fundable. Most businesses don't have adequate documentation of one or more of the three C's, and most clients don't know what the right type of funding is. So that's what we fix as technical advisors. So with that being said, and this should be number 6, right? It's repeated. When it comes down to funding, a lot of times you're going to run into clients, and that they often don't like, or prospective clients, and often they don't like to hear "it depends." So it's better to sometimes create a framework of here's how it typically works. So from this point going forward, we're going to start making some assumptions, and I know making assumptions are dangerous, but we're going to talk about how things normally work, how the average client progresses through. So for the average client, once we have the client in, we get them their shelf corp within 7 days. We put together the uses of funds. Usually we're to go after one of two types of funding. Not always, but usually. And it's usually either an SBA loan. Now, you and I know there's different types of SBA loans. There's 7A, which is more working capital. There's 504, which is more for real estate and equipment. There's express SBA loans, there's micro, but in general, we'll normally go after some variation of an SBA loan, which is where we all used to work, or ABL. Now, some people say, hey, why don't we do both? We really can't effectively do both, because both SBA loans normally and ABL will want to have collateral pledged as the business in case they don't repay, in case the borrower doesn't repay. So normally we can't do both of these on one business. Now we could do two different businesses and do one on each. But let's compare and contrast briefly SBA versus ABL, because I think your familiarity with this at least a high level is going to help you a lot as you visit with clients. So the first element of differentiation is underwriting. What does it take to be fundable? What does it take to get approved? And frankly, we talked about this already. The SBA normally is looking at all three C's. So is that bad? No, but there's more to it. They're not looking at just one of the three C's. They're typically looking for all three. It's also complicated by the fact that the SBA is not the lender. The SBA is the guarantor. So the SBA guarantees that if the borrower doesn't repay, that the lender isn't at a total loss. And usually it's not a full guarantee. It's usually around 80%. But what's the point there? We have to go into SBA loans understanding they are going to look at all three C's, which is fine. We can help clients with all three, not a problem. And they're going to have to typically go through twice the underwriting of the SBA approved lender plus the SBA itself. So there's more involved than what a lot of people think. A lot of people come to us and say, oh, I want an SBA loan. Well, maybe. And if that's certainly what you want, then we'll work towards that. But there may be other options. Another option is ABL, asset-based loan. So it's based off of collateral. Now, again, can we do just credit-based funding? Yes. Can we do just capacity-based funding, which is called revenue-based? Yes. But collateral-based is usually the one C that we'd want to focus on if we're going to do more of a niche funding. ABL is based on one of the three C's, collateral, not all three C's, which inherently makes it faster, easier, and simpler. Owner contribution. We've decided to emphasize this more because we've had a number of clients come back and get mad at us because they didn't know what was required for what they wanted. So they come to us and say, I want an SBA loan. I want an SBA loan for, let's say, $5 million. Okay, great. We'll build everything out legally and ethically. Great. There's our plan. But then we say, well, you know that the SBA normally wants at least 10% owner contribution. So if you want a $5 million loan, do you have 500,000 to show that you're contributing? Well, fuck no. If I had that, I wouldn't be talking to you guys. Well, it's not always going to be what the client wants initially because they're not always financially literate. And in fact, many of our clients, I'd say 9 out of 10, prefer ABL for this reason alone because with ABL, there is no owner contribution. Also, for revenue-based financing, there's no owner contribution. Also, for credit-based funding, there's no owner contribution. So what's the point? We can break any of these three C's and go after niche funding, and those niche lenders do not normally require any owner contribution. That's a big difference between the two. But again, if the client wants SBA, fine, we may have to do an interim round of funding to actually come up with the owner contribution, but we can stair stack it if we need to. Next difference between SBA and ABL that's important that I think that you know is restricted uses. So the SBA, it's not bad. I used to work for the SBA. They put my kids through college. I learned a lot, but the SBA has more rules than maybe what you realized. So in addition to the owner contribution, they also restrict what you can use the money for. So a great example is an office building. I want to buy real estate. Well, that makes sense. Okay, I want to buy an office building. But if you're not going to use at least 51% as what we'd call owner occupied space, then the SBA won't approve it. Well, no, I just want to use part of it for my office and I want to lease out everything else. Well, then that's called speculative real estate and the SBA won't fund it. Same for rental homes, apartment complexes, and such. So SBA is great, but they won't fund all types of deals, not just because of morality or legality, just because of their requirements. What's great about these niche-based lenders, credit-based, collateral-based, or capacity-based, there's normally no restriction on funds. So the ABL is very popular for that as well. Loan sizes. SBA, as you would expect, the larger the loan, the more strenuous the underwriting, which makes sense, right? Because the lender has more and more risk. ABL is a much different animal. ABL, kind of like revenue-based financing for capacity. So if we're doing collateral-based funding or revenue-based funding capacity, actually bigger is better. A number of the lenders do not want to do small deals. In terms of ABL, the normal minimum that we find is 1 million. There's many more that do 2 million. The big boys like Chase and Bank of America won't go below 5 million. So it requires a bit of a different analysis. If you try to apply normal business lending criteria to an ABL, it doesn't make sense. But ABL in general, bigger the better. And we do need to realize 1 million is the lowest. Some people don't like that because like, I don't need $1 million. Well, what if we set it up as a line of credit? So you have $1 million line of credit, you can pull from it what you want. So let's say you only need 500,000. Well, you'd only pay interest on 500,000 because that's all you're using. As you pay it down, then it opens back up and you have access to that line of credit again. So it's important to understand these differences. Next, payback assistance. And this is one that might kind of blow your mind, but it's a very attractive element of how we're doing these ABL loans. So with SBA, there's no payback assistance. In other words, the borrower is expected to pay back the loan. That's kind of the norm in the industry. With ABL, we've designed it differently, whereby we're transferring, if the client doesn't have enough assets, in other words, for the collateral, we'll transfer it to them. 1 cent on the dollar. Very affordable, very easy, can transfer it normally in 24 hours. So that collateral, the assets that we transfer are in the form of accounts receivables, real AR. So then we can turn around and go liquidate that AR. Well, that's a whole nother economic benefit. So they're getting the loan, in this example, $1 million, but now we're collecting the $1 million of AR. And the design of the process is that we're liquidating at an equal or greater pace than what the client is paying on monthly payments. So essentially, we're subsidizing, or what we're calling here payback assistance, covering the loan payments for the first couple years for a client. And that's a great deal. All right, so now let's move over to our topic of how can we go about turning we're just going to round it off, $500 into $1 million, because it sounds too good to be true, but let's look at the specifics so we realize it's not. So how would that work? Well, we first are going to need a shelf corp, and we're giving the shelf corps away. There is a processing fee. The amount of the processing fee is determined based upon the reseller. But if you came to 509pacific.org, you could scroll down here, and for $499.99 processing fee, get the shelf corp. So it's this line here. So we need to start with the shelf corp to pursue funding. Why? Because we need a good business that's clean, that we can add these elements, add the documentation without any surprises. So that's step one, super simple to do. Then we're going to get the documentation process. Normally takes us about 1 week, about 7 days to get the shelf corp deliverables to the client. And at that same exact time, we're going to go into funding right away. So on day 7, we should be going into what we call first tranche, first round of funding. And then that provides initial capital for the client to have money in the client's pocket to fund anything else they might need. So let's say that they needed collateral for ABL. We already said it's 1 cent on a dollar. Well, do they have to come up with that out of pocket? Not by design, because the design is to get them their first tranche. I was just on the phone with Mr. Martin. I don't know if he's on the Zoom now. Let me scroll down and see if he is. He's not, unfortunately. I was just on the phone with Mr. Martin. So I think it was August 4th, he came in to the system, and by August 7th, he had a number of cash funding offers for first tranche. The largest individual offer was for $50,000. So no, 50,000 isn't the end goal. We're not ready for the end goal yet. But for the first tranche, he had access to 50,000 that would obviously more than fund any other expenses that he would have going forward. Now, Mr. Martin's a high net worth individual. He truthfully didn't even accept the 50,000, but that's the goal, is to get clients their first tranche within that first 7 to 10 days of being in the program. So now they have working capital, they have seed capital to fund any other expenses they might have, such as the 1% to buy the collateral if needed. Or also, it could be to fund the 10%. I see Monique's point, and that's right. Yeah, so that working capital could be enough to fund the SBA owner contribution. It could be enough to buy the collateral if they need, whatever they want it for. So then what happens is, in the third step, then we work with the client to identify the right type of funding based upon their wants, their needs, their mitigating circumstances, as we talked about earlier. And then once we know what type of funding, so are we going after an SBA? If so, is it 7A, 504, how much? Or no, we're going to go after ABL. Okay, well, do they have enough collateral? If not, let's transfer. But we need to know at this point what the end goal is. Not just in dollars, but where are those dollars going to come from? Why is that important? Because different lenders, different loan programs have different underwriting, different documentation requirements. So then once we've identified the right type of funding, then we can get the loan package together. Think of that as kind of the paperwork that's necessary to get approved for the loan. We can apply for the large business funding and then get them funded. So with that, there's also kind of a bonus. So what's the topic we're on? how you and I, and this is an important concept, how you and I can help anyone turn $500 into a million or more, not through anything that's illegal or inappropriate, but by following this process. So we get them the Shelf Corp. About 7 days, we get them the deliverables, go into the first round of funding. From there, we build out the loan package, apply, and get funded. In addition to that, we can also provide them access to the Opportunity Fund. The Opportunity Fund was developed to put daily deposits into their business bank account. Well, why is that important? Well, of course, that contributes towards capacity. So that could open up a whole nother round of funding, which we talked about revenue-based funding. But also having cash flow come into the business, of course, makes it look stronger. We have stronger financial statements, stronger bank statements, and so forth. So I'm going to close with this and we'll go to any questions. I think it's really important for those of you that are resellers is to ask your client or your prospective clients, what's the cost of doing nothing? Because we know that we're making a pitch, if you will. Hey, spend $499.99, and we've got a proven legal, ethical program to turn that into a million plus in a short amount of time. So this is what we offer. Put about $500 into your business for the processing fee for the Shelf Corp. Everything else should be funded through the process, and we can turn that into a million plus in about a month. So what is the prospect's opportunity cost of not doing this? Well, the cost of doing nothing refers to the opportunity cost, what lost benefits, what lost potential gains or missed alternatives. Because we know if we provide them the million plus, they can go out and they can buy an existing cash flowing business. They can buy income producing real estate. They could use it to pay off existing debt, launch new projects. But I think this is important because I think so many times people will come to us and they're comparing what you and I offer, which is, hey, I can show you how to turn $500 into $1 million in around a month. They sometimes want to compare us to like a bucket of gold under the rainbow. They often don't really have another alternative. So asking them, what else are you considering? What's your next best bet to our proposition? Because ours is in writing. We guarantee funding. There's no risk to the client. So here's our proposition. We'll help you turn $500 into a million plus in around a month. If you didn't do that, client, what would it cost you? Would you miss out on that real estate? Would you miss out on that existing business you want to buy? Would you miss out on new customers that you need working capital for? I think this is very powerful in helping clients consider this. All right, so with that, let's scroll back up and let's get to the questions, comments, concerns any of you have. All right, Selena is asking about the EIN. So yes, the EIN is included with the $500 processing fee with the Shelf Corp. So, and we'll even see that, I guess it's not specifically stated here, but yes, the EIN is included. We often don't provide the EIN with the initial set of documents for two reasons. We want to, because a lot of times when you give a client an EIN, they'll want to go run to the bank and open a bank account. We recommend don't go right to the bank and open a bank account. Let's make sure that we have the business phone number, the business website, and the business email set up first. We help them with that, of course. So you're right, Selena. We hold back on the EIN a bit, not by not wanting to do what we promised to do, but to keep kind of protect the client from themselves. And then also we need to make sure the client doesn't want to change the name of the Shelf Corp because the Shelf Corp comes like a business in a box. If they want to change the name, that's okay, but we want to change the name before we go get the EIN. But yeah, just text us, Selena, any clients that you think are ready for the EIN, and we can knock that out. Not a problem. Let's see. Brian says his client just received the collateral $1 million. Excellent, excellent. Okay, so Brian, I would say text us and I don't know who the client is, but let's work through that client's next steps and make sure that we're on track with them. But congratulations on that. And I think Brian's also alluding to the fact that he can mark up, you all can mark up. So when we talked about if we're going to do ABL, asset-based lending, then of course we need collateral, asset-based lending. And so we provide the collateral for a penny on the dollar. And I don't remember how Brian does it, but a number of you are marking that up. And it's okay. You make a profit. So maybe you charge them 2 cents on a dollar instead of 1 cent on the dollar. So that way you're able to recognize revenue by helping the client solve their problem. So that's perfectly fine. We have some of you that are charging 5 cents on the dollar. I think there's 3 or 4 of you doing that. So again, you can mark up the processing fee. For us, we charge $4.99, but you could double that, triple that. Some of you are multiplying that times 10, charging $5,000. That's up to you. Same thing on the collateral. We charge a penny on the dollar. We're very transparent about that. If you want to charge the client more, you can, and that's another revenue stream to you. Let's see. Charlie asks, can a client use their existing website and business number? Sure. Yeah. So we're not here to force anything on the client. We need a credible business. We need a fundable business, but we'll work with the client. And if they have whatever they have already in place, that's great. That saves time, effort, and expense. That's wonderful. Chris is asking about the Opportunity Fund. Yes, so the Opportunity Fund is built around being a distribution partner. So the Opportunity Fund is earned income, right? Just like mom and dad taught us. So it's not borrowed money. It's not giving up equity in your business like bringing in an investor. But the Opportunity Fund is designed to help clients that are going through the capital raise process get those daily deposits into their bank account. Real money, doesn't have to be paid back. And then that provides them the opportunity to have stronger financial statements and liquidity. Some people say, oh, no, I don't want to earn any income. I'm not into that. Well, then the alternative would be quick cash. Quick cash is a transference of assets that is not earned income and doesn't have to be paid back. Hopefully that helped. John said good training. Thank you, John. Let's see if there's anything else we need to cover. I guess Dwayne was asking about the Opportunity Fund as well. Yeah, so there's trainings on the Opportunity Fund on our website, but simply put, for those of you that are asking, 509pacific.org, and then they would choose the reseller option when they fill out this form. Didn't cost them anything, no contract. So the reseller is meant to help us go out, create financial literacy, well, essentially help us perform our 3 mandates, and they're paid. If you let's take Lamy, who's on here, and Lamy is one of our big hitters. For every time that Lamy refers a client, he knows he's going to make at least $50,000. And I know for some of you, 50,000 is not a big deal, but he's making 5 points off the client's capital raise. I think all of his clients are doing the ABL, which is for $1 million plus. So Ramey knows every time he refers in a client, he should be predictably going to make 50,000 per referral. Not bad, because you've people like Ramey and Mark and Matthew, those of you that are average doing a deal a day, 50,000 a day times 20 days in a month is a pretty big deal. All right, well, we covered quite a bit. We ran a little bit long, but hopefully this was helpful. If you need individualized assistance, text us 903-347-8042. We'll see you back tomorrow morning. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.